Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morgan, of Motor City Madmouth, and I am pleased to be joined by my crew, Rick Curti, Mr. Opinion. Good evening, Rick.
Thank you, guys.
And, of course, Lou Landers. Welcome back, Lou, or L Square. Give us the old salute. Very good. And last but not least, Mr. Concrete Dump, Eric Katz. Welcome back, Eric.
Thank you.
All right. Well, you know what? Tonight's show, just to let everybody know, is we're going to be going around the world of baseball. When I mean that, I mean it literally and figuratively. So, with that said, we're going to lead off with the World Baseball Classic returning the spring of 2023. Rick Curti, what are your thoughts? Do you think that's a great idea? This was a brainchild of Bud Selig.
Yeah, if you want to make the game international and bring it to other countries and have a competition, yeah, I think it's great, and I think it goes well with the MLB wanting to put some games like we mentioned before in Paris and in Asia. So I think it goes hand in hand with what they're doing. So to me, it makes perfect sense, and I think it's a great idea to not only showcase the United States, but to showcase other countries like Mexico, Denmark. I mean, there's countries that I had no idea had a baseball team, but they do. So I think it's kind of fun.
Do you like it that it's being held during spring training?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, you can't do it during the season. I mean, you have to do it sometime. That, or they could do it after the season. So I probably would maybe do it after the season, but I don't have a problem with it.
Eric?
I mean, it showcases the talent, showcases Major League Baseball, like the best that the league has to offer. And so I'm okay with it, especially because I don't think the Olympics are going to have baseball and softball again. And so, I'm cool. I'm cool with it. They want to grow the game internationally. So, this is a perfect opportunity to do it. Basically have your own quote unquote baseball Olympics.
All right, Lou.
Well, I agree with what these two guys said, but I also like that it kind of showcases people you don't see playing in Major League Baseball. A lot of players you wouldn't know exist. You don't know much about them, and you get to see them. You get to see different styles of baseball, specifically from, Taiwan, Chinese Taipei, Japan, whatever it might be. And all those Asian ball clubs are usually very good. They play the game the right way. Contact, speed, great defense. You don't get to see that a lot in Major League Baseball anymore. It's kind of that true 3 outcome, homer, walk, strikeout. And you kind of see the Asian teams playing fundamental baseball that I think we all grew up watching. So I kind of like to watch that. I like to see some guys that may have retired from Major League Baseball, but maybe represent their country still. I think it's great.
Yeah, I do too. I'm glad to see it come back. And, you talk about some guys that have retired from Major League Baseball. It is good to see them play for a few more weeks. Show that you figure you've done everything in the game. So now you have a chance to go ahead and win internationally, And not to make it a political show or anything like that. It is unfortunate and that I used to love watching when the United States competed against Russia in any foreign international competition, although I know Russia is really not known for their baseball. But yes, there are a lot of great countries. When you have a chance to see Puerto Rico, Japan, South Korea, and the beat goes on. And folks, just so you know, 108 Stitches can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, want to point out that when you subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, you get the visuals as well. And you can also see it on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. So, yeah, I think we can all say that the World Baseball Classic does baseball a lot of justice, and I'm glad that they're able to promote it internationally as well.
Scott, I was raising my hand as to not interrupt because I know I do that sometimes. I still feel bad for interrupting Eric last week, but I'm glad he snapped back at me. So you mentioned to Rick that you weren't sure how he felt about the timing of the World Baseball Classic. Should it be in spring training? I don't really see a better time for it. I'm not sure that I love it, but I'm not sure where else you would do it other than maybe after the season, which might not be a bad idea if you consider that people are still in baseball mode. They get playoff baseball, and then they get some of the best players in the world right after it. But I would make an argument that a lot of players might not want to play in that after a long season, whereas at least in spring training, I mean, they're already playing anyway. My only concern would be you see injuries sometimes because guys are playing way too much, way too fast, and they're not built up properly yet. Kind of like what we might be seeing now with the shortened spring training this year.
Well,
Yeah, but
I
let me point out one thing, Eric. Hang on for a second, okay? I've seen other sports actually have it during the middle of the year, and I don't know whether I'm totally for that, but I've seen that, like the Olympic break, for hockey and things like that. Do I agree with it? Middle, I'm not crazy about it, and then you're getting in the way of the All-Star game and those
Injuries too, man. You're paying
Yeah.
guys way too much money to go play in the World Baseball Classic and get hurt and then miss the rest of the season or something.
Right, but I was just looking at an alternative time. I'm not sold on doing it in the middle of the year, but I've seen other sports actually take a break during their seasons to do these all-star competitions. All right, Eric, go ahead.
Well, I can't see baseball doing it. I think hockey can kind of get by with doing it because, it's, I think out of the big four sports, it's probably number 3 or number 4. But because hockey can afford to do it, knowing that people aren't going to really be itching for it to come back or be in a real hurry for it to come back. But, when exactly, as far as when exactly else are you going to do the World Baseball Classic besides spring training? I mean, we're complaining now that these guys don't throw enough, which is part of the reason why they get hurt, because people, I think they've, especially pitchers, where we're not seeing any complete games anymore, where they're like, oh, we don't want to get them hurt just for them to get hurt anyway, which is basically doing the opposite thing. I think that it's perfect for it. I mean, it gives them playing experience. It gets them kind of in better shape for the season. As far as getting hurt for the year, I've never actually seen it happen during the World Baseball Classic. I've heard of injuries happening, but they're on the shelf for, a week or two at most, give or take. But
yeah, in spring training especially, but mid-season it becomes a lot more serious, even if you miss 2 or 3 weeks potentially if you're on a contending team, right?
Well, yeah, that's during the season. I'm talking about during spring training.
100%.
But there's two, but in terms of all that, I've never seen it happen. I mean, people get hurt in spring training all the time. Are we going to say we can't have spring training anymore? No, it's the same exact idea, except you're competing on a world stage, and it's just great. It's great for the sport. It gets the players in better shape just because they are going against players who have been in the league a while. They're not going against some young arm in spring training where you have no idea where the ball is going to go and might even break the bar window in Durham.
You know what? I as a fantasy baseball guy, you guys know I'm big into fantasy baseball. I love the World Baseball Classic because I'm with Eric. Guys get going faster, and I love to target hitters in fantasy that are playing in the World Baseball Classic because that they're that much further ahead when the season begins than the guys that aren't playing in the World Baseball Classic. And again, I'm not sure I love it in spring training, but I think it's the best possible option.
Yeah, and let me also add to that too, Lou, that you're right. I mean, spring training is an option. Of course, when hitters get off to slower starts, you're able to get up to speed a lot quicker under much better competition during the World Baseball Classic, whereas during spring training itself, the guys, get their work in, and I don't think the regimen as serious as it would be at any other time. So anybody else want to add to this before we move on to the next topic?
I mean, we've seen it time and time again how, especially these past 2 seasons, 2020 especially and 2021, where we've seen that spring training in order to get up to the speed of things is necessary in order for the players to be in the best possible area to be successful. I think that, World Baseball Classic essentially puts a start to the season, gets all the kinks and everything that these guys have out of it. They're playing, 9-inning games. They're against seasoned professionals, and they'll see something similar to it when the season goes on. And I think it's just great. I think personally, you could argue it's better than spring training.
Okay, that's fair enough. All right, let's go on to some big news over the weekend, and they didn't even occur in the United States. When I heard this, there was no doubt I was going to include this in this show. Roki Sasaki, a 20-year-old right-handed pitcher, was pursued by MLB teams before joining Nippon Professional Baseball's Chiba Lotte Marines threw a 19 strikeout perfect game on Sunday and a 6-0 win over the Oryx Buffaloes. It was the 16th perfect game in Japanese baseball history and the first since 1994. He only needed 105 pitches, and he ended up striking out an NPB mark of 13 consecutive strikeouts. The MLB record for a perfect game is 14, shared by Sandy Koufax and Matt Cain, and the MLB record is 10 consecutive strikeouts. Wow, this to me is absolutely unbelievable. It really, really is. So, what's your take, Lou?
I mean, that's special. I don't care what level you're at. I don't care what league you're in. That's special. That's an incredible accomplishment. And the 105 pitches doesn't seem like a small amount, but it is a lot more impressive when you consider that he had 19 strikeouts. I mean, strikeout pitchers rack up pitches, you know. Guys typically that strike out that many are at 100 pitches by the 6th inning. They're not going a full distance. They're not throwing a perfect game. So very impressive stuff. And I'd like to see more of him. And maybe he'll be in the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah, that's unreal.
And 19K perfect game. I mean, doesn't matter the league. I don't care how you slice it. That's incredible. I mean, to go 105 pitches. I mean, yeah, which to be truthful, these guys will rack up anywhere between 110 to 120 pitches on average for some of these guys, especially the ones that, as you were talking about, that just strike out guys like no tomorrow, unless you're Dusty Baker sending guys out for 140 plus. But, that's just incredible. 19K perfect game. Don't care how you slice it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, that stat line is like a triple crown. The complete game, perfect game, 19 strikeouts. I'm impressed with 105 pitches. I mean, that must have been like a 2-hour game right there. So that's a phenomenal accomplishment. You can see why so many MLB teams were trying to snatch him up, and don't be surprised he goes to the MLB maybe in a couple of years or so.
Every year, baseball has that one Japanese player. This year, it was Suzuki who went to the Cubs, which the Cubs are trying round 2 in the Japanese League roulette.
So far so good for Suzuki though. I think he had his second homer today.
He did. And yeah. He's racking it up. He's clearly ready to go. But he's probably going to be the guy like that. He's probably going to be the guy that like what Tanaka was with the Yankees, and then what Matsuzaka was when the Red Sox and a bunch of other teams were going out after him, and same with Ki Agawa, which we'll forget about that one.
Yusei Kikuchi's pitching tonight, I think. He was another highly coveted pitcher.
So we're gonna start seeing. He's probably gonna be a guy that teams will fork over an arm and a leg for to get him the post, and then come over to the United States.
No question about it. Well, I got to tell you something, guys. Just reading what I wrote just reading this to me blows me away. So I don't know if I really need to go ahead and say a whole lot. When I just think of, like you say, Rick, the 105 pitches.
That's a great Maddox right there. That's a great Maddox stat line right there.
Oh, I know.
His control is unbelievable. The umpire must have took him out for a beer for making his job so easy. And what was it, 19 strikeouts? And what was it, like 14 in a row?
Well,
this is like Nolan Ryan, Walter Johnson territory that he did. This is unbelievable.
Yeah, 19 strikeouts and 13 in a row and 105 pitches. I'll tell you what, folks, I don't give lottery advice, but if you're listening to this show, there's a bunch of good numbers here that you can tie the 13, the 19, and the 105. And if by chance you go ahead and win anything at the lottery, wherever you're at, and, don't tell us about it, because then we'll all be biting our tongue anyway. So
donate it to the show.
There you go. And we'll cut it up 4 ways. But so let's go to the chat room. Mark Pricer says it's on his watch list, and the Reds dip into the international pool finally. So
I doubt it.
The Reds won't. They're
already shedding as much salary as possible.
They won't. Yeah, they're dumping everything.
The Reds are going.
He's a Reds fan though, so
I love Cincinnati.
Oh, is he?
Mark, gone are the days of ownership with the big red machine. And your owner right now, he is cheap. He's doing a rebuild. He's practically shed every big bat he ever had in that lineup from last year. He's going full rebuild. No, he's not known for spending high in free agency. I'm not expecting any changes over there in the Queen City.
Well, let me point out something here that amazes me even more. That this is the 16th perfect game in Japanese baseball history and the first since 1994.
Good. I mean, that makes it
what makes it more impressive. The Japanese league is no joke. I've seen the games. We've seen the talent that's come from there. You know, I mean, they've had great legends. Like Sadaharu with 868 career home runs. It's a phenomenal league. I love the Japanese league, and for him to do that, it's phenomenal.
I was just saying how contact friendly
they can play. They can play. They
put the bat on the ball. So it's tough to get a perfect game against guys who actually don't swing and miss every pitch.
They're very disciplined hitters. They're very disciplined. They dominated the World Baseball Classic for a while, and they're just these guys are all about precision. They're all about quality ABs. They're not looking to just sock it over the wall each time, unlike Americans. But these guys are
they're great pure hitters. They're scientists.
If you want the game in its purity, the Japanese league is the way to go.
Well, yeah, and I think the pitchers. I mean, Ohtani obviously throws gas, but I think even the pitchers, they're not throwers. They're pitchers. They really mix and match. They locate. They don't just go up there and say, "Oh, I can throw 98 and try and blow it by you."
Well, the amazing part about all of this is this. When you think of Roki Sasaki, and then we're mentioning Sandy Koufax and Matt Cain, especially Sandy Koufax, that's pretty impressive to me. To mention anybody in the same breath as Sandy Koufax. But again, I can't believe when I think of these numbers, okay? The kid's 20 years old, has 19 strikeouts, a perfect game, 105 pitches, and 13 in a row. How much more impressive can you get than that? I don't know.
That's the most impressive. I've never seen a stat that impressive. And I've seen complete games and 20 strikeout games. That to me is like one of the most dominant, most impressive stat lines I've ever heard.
Which is why I brought it up on the broadcast here to make sure that we come up with some different stuff. Mark Pricer goes on and says that Japanese hitters have a lot of patience. With that said, now that we've addressed the international portion of the show by me, okay, the World Baseball Classic and the old Japanese baseball, I'm going to turn it over to Lou Landers. And Lou, fire away.
All right. Well, one of the things I want to talk about here tonight, we already know pitchers don't go deep into games. It's become, pretty rare if they go more than 6 innings. But so far this year, we've seen a lot of guys being yanked in the 3rd, the 4th. We saw Darvish with a no-hitter yanked in the 6th. What do you guys think about them not going deep into games? And is it purely because of just the expedited spring training? Should they have maybe extended spring training to avoid this? Is it going to be too taxing on bullpens? I know they've expanded the roster to 28 versus 26 to add more pitchers, but at some point these bullpens are going to be worn out, and not in July, in April. Rick, your thoughts?
I hate when they pull out pitchers so early. I know it's because of they want to save them from injuries and all this stuff. We see look at the Mets already, and so I don't like it, but I guess because of that, here goes this word again, analytics. We got to do it. So I hate it, especially when you pull someone out of a no-hitter. I mean, come on. I mean, I just want to see the guy pitch. And he gets hurt, That's life. I mean, I could bust my face falling down the stairs. I'm stuff going up the stairs. Things happen. I hate it, but it's understandable.
Eric, over to you.
I think part of it right now is just because of the way spring training was, and also just considering like how kind of rushed it was. I think they're doing that, but at the same time, you guys are. I'd rather overuse the guy than underuse the guy because he's going to get hurt either way. The guy's doing a repetitive motion over and over and over again. I mean, eventually, I know we're not going to be Dusty Baker and pitch the guy till his arms fall off, but right now it's because of the shortened spring training that we're seeing pitchers just last maybe 4 innings. But, there really is. It's really a no-win situation with pitchers, just because the same repetitive motion of going from the side of your hip to over your head and then forward again. It hurts your arm after a long while, and that's just the nature of it. Eventually, when you neglect something for so long, it's gonna hurt. And we saw it. It's not the first time we've seen pitchers get overused and under. Actually, it's the era of underused pitchers. At one point, it was overused pitchers. I know you could probably argue that's what happened with Dwight Gooden with the Mets prior to him running into that trouble, and also some underuse too because he couldn't keep clean off the field.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And my concern would be the teams are already so reliant on their bullpens. When you have to start getting 6 and 7 innings out of your bullpen rather than even 4 and 5, which is a lot, it starts to take its toll. I mean, I watched that whole Yankees-Red Sox series over the weekend, an extra innings game, but It just seemed like even the best pitchers, the best outings, these guys at 70, 75 pitches were out of the game. And is it really going to hurt them if they go another 10 and try and go another inning? Or do you really have to bring these relievers in just start an inning and not with guys on base? I mean, whatever happened to the guys that come in and get out of jams? Everyone wants to just start with a clean inning and take all of this pressure off relievers. It's not supposed to be pressureless. It's supposed to be high pressure situation for these relievers. That's why they make the big bucks. So I'm kind of sick and tired of it. I understand not having a guy go 90, 95 right away necessarily, but having that 70 to 75 pitch max and sticking to it and not seeing, how the game's going, how the guy's pitching, has he dropped in velocity, has he lost location? If those things aren't happening, leave the guy in the game, let him pitch a little more.
At this point,
or Eric,
at this point, we might as well go what they do in college baseball, which is it doesn't matter if you're a starter, it doesn't matter what you do. As a pitcher, you're out there pitching. You could be starting or you can be relieving. I've seen it done multiple times at the college level, particularly where I went to college, and it didn't matter, obviously. And then you had to manage your bullpen like that rather than establish the fact that guys are either a starter or a reliever as they do in Major League Baseball. Because at this point, it's kind of starting to become that where they're going to go to their bullpen early, and eventually the reliever's arms are going to fall off.
Well, let me tell you, I'll take the sarcastic side of this whole thing. Number one, okay, pitchers don't go deep into games anymore anyway. So words complete game is like a foreign language these days. So what's the difference? So not going deep into games with expert, that doesn't surprise me. Nowadays they're trying to be a little bit more cautious. I understand why. And you pointed out, Lou, okay, you have 28 pitchers for a while, you get 28 players for a while with more pitchers. But, to me, I've always felt that pitchers should be stretched out 7-8 no matter what anyways. And all this specialization gets on my nerves. It really, really does, especially back in the old days when they used to pitch on 4 or 5 days rest. So, and I talked to Sandy Alcantara during spring training, guys, and I can tell you right now, he came into camp in really good shape. And, you got to remember, got to wonder whether some of these guys came in to shape and all that. And you think things are bad now. What about COVID-19 2020 when these guys were throwing into socks and all that and trying every way that they could to stay in shape? So, am I surprised that they're not going into? Yeah, I am a little bit. But by the same token, that's today's Major League Baseball, right? Everything is a lot more cautious. And again, being old school like I am, I still miss a complete game. So I'm with you all the way. What can I tell you as far as going deep? They don't go deep anyway. So what's the difference?
Yeah. Well, while we're on the subject of pitchers and relief pitching and all that, been a trend for a couple of years now, but so far to start the season, we've seen it multiple times. Other than maybe 4 or 5 teams out there, there seems to be a revolving door when it comes to the 9th inning for a lot of these teams, who's closing. And I mean, I'm not set on these guys having rules per se, like this guy has to pitch the 9th inning, but don't you think that it makes sense to have a guy, maybe 2 guys who are designated for that 8th, 9th inning rather than mixing and matching so often? I know they're professionals. I know when they're called upon, they need to come in and pitch, but there's a completely different mentality of pitching in the 6th or the 7th or the 8th than coming in for a save. And I feel like it's unfair to pitchers to use them in the 9th on a Wednesday and then on a Friday call upon them in the 6th. And then on a Sunday, they're back in the 9th. There needs to be some sort of consistency. Starting pitchers know they're going every 4th or 5th day. Relief pitchers should have a better idea, in my opinion, of kind of where they're at. Why do you guys think this is happening? Scott, I'll start with you.
Well, again, you know what? I'm going to go back to my old school ways, okay? I don't care if guys pitch multiple innings a couple of days in a row. Once upon a time, you had the 2 or 3 innings save. But this is just 2022 baseball. It really is. So teams using it, to me, I don't care. I just think that the whole thing is all messed up. I understand there's a lot of money, Lou, involved. You follow me? That these guys have to do it a certain way. But again, I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. And you know, your man Mark Pricer is on a roll, okay? I love what this guy writes. I'll tell you, hey, Mark, maybe one of these days we'll invite you on here and make it a 5-some, all right? He's asking me, is it injury or just a number of shows going through the line 3 times as hard? But now I like this guy even more. He's telling me, damn, Scott, did you stop watching football when players stopped playing both ways? Really? Hello, Mark. I remember it all too well. Don't sell me short. Okay. So just like to get everything out in the chat room, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But again, let's go back to what you were talking about, Lou, about teams using multiple relievers, close out games early. That doesn't surprise me. They're going to do it. You know, that again, when you have the extra amount of pitchers, you can afford to do that anyways, right? Lou, should I ask a question with a question?
No, you're not wrong. It's one of those things where I understand if you have the one or the 2 guys. I get that. You know, mix and match. Maybe one's a lefty, one's a righty, depending on the matchups. Maybe there's a jam in the 8th, and you bring in the best guy to get out of that jam, rather than trying to wait till the end. But you're seeing 4, 5, 6 different guys potentially pick up saves in a bullpen every year. It wasn't like that even 5 years ago. I mean, what's happened, Rick?
I'm going to use that word again, probably analytics. You know, everything's so different now. And I hate that word analytics, but they go back and say, well, maybe it's better if we do like this way. I miss the old days of the closers. I used to love watching Dennis Eckersley. You know, I used to love watching like Trevor Hoffman. I go back to Raleigh Fingers and go. I mean, that was great about a closer. You go the 9th inning. And then maybe you can go 8 innings, you know, like a Mario Rivera would sometimes do that. And that's what they need to do. But, you know, it's just, I guess, because of maybe they want to make them interchangeable and make them like, hey, I could put them in the 9th. I could make them like a hybrid pitcher and all this stuff. And then, of course, that darn analytics again. They got to, you know, this is a better opportunity. This is a better, you know, my percentage is doing it this way instead of that way. And it's all over. I don't get it. It's weird. You see that not just in baseball, you see that in the NFL too, with how they protect quarterbacks. It's just a different generation. And I'm from another generation, so it is what it is. I hate it. I want to see the closer.
Well, let's not lose sight of the fact that you have the 3 batter minimum anyways, right? And now you have an era where you have openers, okay, instead of closers, and you can end up having the ghost runner. So there's a lot of different things that come into play with how these analytics, as Rick would talk about, are judged. So there's really the bottom one I'm trying to tell you guys. There's no rhyme and reason to any of this stuff, really, is there?
No, I guess it's what analytics say. Eric, I'd love to get your thoughts on all this.
It's just like every era. The game changes. At one point, we weren't hitting home runs. At one point, you could lead the league in home runs by hitting just 6 or 7. Now we've gone to the long ball era where a home run is everything. Obviously, but it's just the game has changed. I mean, I'm okay with not having a set closer. I really am. It saves money at the end of the day. It saves some teams money at the end of the day where you can put them in another spot. The Rays are perfectionists at this, where they'll bring a guy based on matchup. I love it. I mean, I like having great closers. Which by the way, Curti, Mo above all people. That's all there is to it. Mariano Rivera above all people.
Well, Eckersley was in my era. He was phenomenal. I love Eckersley. I love, especially when he pulled out the gun. Boom, bang, bang, bang.
Yeah, well, Mariano Rivera compared to as great as Dennis Eckersley was, Mariano Rivera is still a god compared to him.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll throw a name that many of you guys, although maybe Rick and Lou would know, and Eric too. How about John Hiller, of the Detroit Tigers?
I know
Was a
him.
pretty good closer. And I'll
Terrific
tell you,
closer.
there's no way that Billy Martin could have managed in this era because he believed you're either going 9 and that's all there is to
I
it.
remember when
So,
Dodger had Gagne. Gagne was fantastic.
He
yeah.
was on roids, and
Yeah.
then Mark,
Well, I'll tell you what.
and I appreciate you bringing up the Nasty Boys, Mark. I mean, obviously,
Dibble, Rob Dibble,
yep, they
Yeah.
were
Norm Charleston. They were
I
Randy Myers.
they had a hell of a bullpen back then, to the point where they just mowed Oakland back to California.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, we can do another show on closers, but when I think of Willie Hernandez, who won a world championship with the Tigers in '84, okay, and then John Hiller, who was a huge
dominant team.
Right. Oh, yeah. And then John Hiller was a big part of the '68 Tigers. So, you know,
Even Brad Lidge. I mean, what happened to the closer roles?
I think
we still have some. I mean, Kimbrel has been excellent for years. Kenley Jansen has been excellent for years now on a different team. Aroldis Chapman's pretty damn good. I'm sure I'm missing some obvious ones, but there's still Hader, Liam Hendricks. There's some good ones, but it used to be that almost every single team had that designated closer. Now, I think I've named all of them. No,
Scott, I'll date you one back where this was an episode of the TV show MASH with Alan Alda and them, and yeah, and there was an episode where the Dodgers, it was the famous Bobby Thompson game where the Dodgers were playing the Giants, and Winchester, who was played by I forget the actor's name, was like, you know, as soon as they brought Ralph Branca out, he's like, you know, Branca games in the bag.
And David Ogden Steers.
That's
the actor's
name. That's who I was thinking of. I name was at the tip of my tongue. I just could not remember it.
That's a great episode. And Klinger and him bet, and that was the Miracle of Coogan's Bluff where they came back, and the famous Bobby Thompson home run.
Yeah, and I'll add a little light to this one. My mentor, and I say mentor, Ernie Harwell, called the shot heard around the world, but he did it, I believe, on TV, not radio. So there you go, Lou. Well, okay, my mentor, Ernie Harwell. I know that I have a bunch of baseball geniuses on this show. And, you know, you look at my Facebook page, my Ernie Harwell was my Uncle Ernie. Rest in peace, Ernie. There was no doubt I was going to. These guys are bringing up Bobby Thompson. Shot heard around the world. I'm making sure that everybody knows how proud I am and how I love my Uncle Ernie Harwell. So,
Ernie was classy in the beginning.
One of the greatest.
Classy in the beginning, classy during the break, and classy in the end.
Well, getting off subject a little bit, when I can mention Ernie Harwell, so be it. So, all right, so there you go, Lou. We've got pitchers not going deep. We got teams using multiple relievers. Where are we going next?
We're going to the top prospects making debuts. More young players making debuts earlier than ever before. We're seeing some of the top guys in Major League Baseball in Bobby Witt, in Julio Rodriguez, in Spencer Torkelson, and Hunter Green, and more are coming. Personally, I love seeing this. I'm not sure if it's because of the new CBA or not, but not having these guys have to wait till maybe May to come up because they want to have another year of service time. I like to see teams bringing these guys up, going with their best rosters. I love to see it. None of them have had incredibly breakout game yet to start their career. Hunter Green was impressive for a while. I think they've all gone into the hit column finally now. Bobby Witt looks great on defense, but it's exciting to see kind of this influx of young talent, in my opinion. Eric, are you excited as I am to see it?
Oh yeah. I think it's great. I mean, if you're a top prospect, you know, why not give you that chance to compete during the season? If it doesn't work out, we'll send you back down rather than put them at single A and then work your way up, where these guys are just tearing it up at that level. I mean, Bobby Witt, I mean, that guy is gifted. I mean, I think you know, we got some, I think in Cincinnati, you know, I'll give you one, Mark. You know, I think Hunter Green, man, what a talent. You know, I think these guys deserve the opportunity to try and compete at the next level before you put them back down where, when you send them to single A where all they're throwing is fastballs, these guys are taking it right out of the park and probably landing in some guy's backyard.
No, absolutely. And Riley Green was another one who was going to make the opening day roster before an injury. CJ Abrams of the Padres got his chance because he had a good spring, and Tatis Jr. got hurt. So we're seeing it all around the league, more so on teams that are trying to win now, other than the Reds, of course. I think they called up Nick Lodolo, though, another one of their top prospects. He's going to make a start soon. So it's exciting to see it around the league for sure. Obviously, we've seen it, with the odd guy like a Soto and a Cunha and a Trout and a Harper and so on, but never so many all at one time, all to start the season on opening day. So that I absolutely love. Rick, your thoughts?
I love it too, instead of waiting 2-3 years, like, oh, this guy's going to be the next this or that. He's going to be the next Mickey Mantle, and you got to wait 2-3 years. Or the NBA or the NFL, boom, they're in there right away. And I think that's what MLB is trying to do. They want to make the game more excitable. Why wait 3 years when a guy is doing fantastic and, he's getting promoted from single A to double A. Now he's in triple A. He's this big top prospect. We want to put butt to the seats. We want more people viewing in. This guy's great, so why not? And I just feel old because I remember Bobby Witt Sr. when he was pitching for the Rangers. And now I get to see his sons. So it makes me feel really old, but it's great to see the new generation of baseball players. So that's what makes it exciting.
Hey, Curti, how'd you feel when Vlad Senior's son came up? We all remember Vlad. We all remember Vlad when he was with the Expos and the Angels. Did that make you feel any older?
I feel really old. So
same with Craig Biggio's son. So we're all.
The difference is that Craig Biggio's son isn't performing very well. Vlad Senior's son is doing a hell of a job.
Craig got and I feel old, but it's so nice to see the new generation. Like, hey, I remember his dad. It's just when I hear Bobby Witt Jr., I think of his father when he pitched for the Rangers.
In regards to Craig's son, he wouldn't be the first. Just look at Yogi Berra's son Dale, who wasn't all that great either when he was in the bigs.
Well, of course, it always doesn't. Sometimes the apple does fall far from the tree, as they say.
The apple definitely fell far from the tree on a number of different levels with Dale.
I'll throw a couple names out there too. I think you guys mentioned Bo Bichette, got Fernando Tatis Jr., and we all know about a lot of these other ones. The only thing I'll mention a couple things here.
The Griffey's and the Bonds, of course.
Right, exactly. That's Barry Bonds is a swear word, so I have nothing more to say about that. So, but Riley Green, I believe, is out for a couple of months. He had that foot injury, and Spencer Torkelson got his first hit today against the Boston Red Sox. So, and I think the only thing that I want to lose sight of in this whole thing here, Lou, is the fact that there is no service time manipulation anymore. And I call it the Chris Bryant rule is what I do. Yeah. And that's why this got negotiated into the CBA. So onwards we go to Aaron Judge, right, Lou?
Yeah, but I also want to say I feel like if this was a year earlier, we would have seen Wander Franco a lot earlier than we did last year. The Rays waited a long time to bring him up. And I have to wonder if maybe the rules were in place last year. We see Franco in April.
We definitely see Franco. We've seen what he can do. We saw what he did last year. We saw what he did last year with the Rays, and the kid is clearly a star. And so we definitely would have at least seen him. Whether he would have done well. Upon being called up, it remains to be. Who knows?
Well, he struggled initially, right, Eric, and then eventually he just took off.
No, he began hot. And then obviously, like all these hot shots, pitchers figure him out.
Yeah.
And then boom, he's clearly one of the best young talents in the game.
I would have liked to see him go through some struggles in April and then explode from May till the end of the season, though, right?
Right.
It would have been a lot better.
And let me remark about the Nasty Boys, Mark. This is completely off topic. It was Sparky Lyle and Goose Gossage who changed it all with the setup man. And as well as you could throw in Dick Tidrow in there. So the Nasty Boys may have been iconic, but it was Lyle and Gossage who perfected that.
Yeah, well, let me point out something that you, being a hockey guy, Lou, okay, we're talking about organizations that don't have deep pockets. Once upon a time, the Pittsburgh Penguins held back Marc-Andre Fleury as long as they could when they didn't have the money, and then they finally ultimately brought him up. So, we can say what you want about manipulation of service time, but it does happen in other sports, especially hockey. And that was the best example that I could point out. Being a hockey guy as you are, Lou.
Yeah,
Okay.
but to my knowledge, the NHL doesn't have arbitration the way that Major League Baseball does. They sign their contract and then they become free agents. They don't have like a 6-year window. I think it's a 3 or 4-year window before they become a restricted free agent rather than unrestricted free agent. And there's offer sheets and all sorts of things. Baseball has that system in place where you have the first 3 years kind of on a rookie deal, and then you go into arbitration. All they're doing when they were manipulating the service time is delaying that first arbitration. And back to the relievers, I think Eric kind of hit on it. When you have these guys and they're starting to get saves and they're becoming closers and they might get 20 or 25 saves a year, that comes back to bite you as an organization when it comes to arbitration. So it's better to hold guys back and let each guy get 12 or 13 saves, and then you don't have to pay them as much in arbitration.
Well, and I'll tell you what, I'll take it a step further, okay? If a guy feels like you're holding him back in arbitration down the road, don't you think that may factor into his decision whether he wants to leave you because he's angry because you had done that? So, let's...
Thank you for this segue, Scott. We're going to move on to a topic that might have something to do with what you just said.
Well, you know what GMTA stands for, guys?
Okay, in regards to touch on the NHL, I mean, that was obviously before... I think was that before they had to shut down the whole year, or was that after when they held Marc-Andre Fleury back?
I believe it was right after.
Okay, I was expecting it to be before because there was a number of issues at play at that point in time.
It might. Oh, you know what? I think it was the year before because Crosby was the year after.
Yeah,
Crosby came into the league the year after. So yeah, I think it was the year before.
Because that was part of the catalyst to why they canceled that season was because of the service time. Of course, there was numerous other issues going on during that time, but that was back when the owners had a tight grip on the league. It was an owners' league at that point. I think the NHL was one of the last leagues to have owners completely dominate the league.
Yeah, well, getting back to my GMTA, Lou, you know what that stands for, right? We'll see what you learned from me all this time.
Good morning, Tom Arnold.
No, that's in Hollywood. Great minds think alike when you were talking about segues. So that's where you
so you were setting me up. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Come on. I've been in this business 42 years to set you up, pal. And so, when you can pick up signals with your co-host, it's a beautiful thing. I do want to mention, though, when it comes to hockey and other sports, leagues are going to hold you back any way that they can, regardless, either avoid, one, paying you, or two, they want to, again, they're holding on as long as you can. So it doesn't make any difference to begin with. Maybe the NBA is a little bit different, but, where hockey, they'll hold you back. They could bury you in the minor leagues if they want. Basketball could bury you overseas for a while. And football, they don't bury you anywhere. So
pull you on the practice squad, but at least you can get picked off a practice squad.
Well, that's true, too. Yeah. So, all right, go ahead.
So, Aaron Judge, big topic in the news over the last week or so. We gave the Yankees a deadline before opening day. Was he going to have a contract extension? He's a free agent at the end of the year, for those who don't know. The subject kind of twofold. First, I want to get everyone's thoughts on Judge rejecting the deal. We'll get to that, but also just long-term deals in Major League Baseball in general. I'm going to give my thoughts. Eric, being a Yankee fan, he's going to get to talk first after me, of course. I'd love to hear his thoughts. Hopefully he agrees with me. I think Judge is crazy for turning down.
Best for last.
Judge turning down 7 years, $30 million a year. He's only played one full season really in his entire career. I am sure he's a hell of a player. Seems to be a good leader, but the Yankees haven't won a World Series with him. They haven't gone to a World Series with him. And I think him wanting more money, when he says in one breath, I want to be a Yankee for life, I'm a team guy, and then to turn down a very nice deal. It wasn't like they offered him 5 years, $22 million a year, $30 million plus a year, 7 years. It's pretty nice. I'm not sure he's going to get that anywhere else, but maybe the Mets or the Giants or the Dodgers or something. But he's also 30 years old in 2 weeks. It's not like he's 27 or 28. You're talking about a guy he's asking for 8 or 9 years and upwards of $37.5 million a year. Anyone would be crazy to give a guy who's that big, who has had injury issues, whose body's going to break down, a deal till he's 38 or 39, because when have these deals ever worked out. 10-year deals, 8 to 10-year deals, unless you are in your mid-20s, do not work out. Maybe for the first 5 years, maybe 6. But by the time you get to the tail end of that contract, you are throwing money away. Eric, over to you.
I mean, Aaron Judge has only played 1 full year, which he's a great player. I love the guy. I mean, he's practically the face of the franchise at this point. But you are Aaron. Your injury. Number one. I mean this as honest as possible because I love the guy. I really do. You've been injury prone, and and it happens. I get it, but you're very injury prone. You turn down a $30 million a year, which is pretty good. You're not going to get 10 years. I would advise nobody to sign anybody for 10 years because they never work. I can only think of one contract where it truly did work, and that was Derek Jeter. And
how old was Jeter when he signed that deal?
Probably early 20s. Am I correct?
Mid-20s, maybe. Like, that's why I didn't mind the Tatis deal at 22, Harper, Machado, those deals. Those guys were still young. They weren't 30 years old.
But you're expecting the guy to finish the deal when he's 40. It's not going to happen. Your body breaks down and stuff like that.
Especially when you're 6'7" and like 400 pounds. I mean, he's not actually, but he's not built longevity.
Aaron, my message is, Aaron, you literally are about to enter into a high stakes poker game where you're dumping everything on the table, every single hand. It could very well work out, and I hope like hell it works out.
I hope he's MVP. Sure.
Yeah, you had your turn, Lou. Yep, and I love the guy as a player, but Aaron, you're literally entering into a high stakes poker game. What's going to happen is you are literally going to drain your value if you get hurt. So you have to do everything in your power to stay healthy and produce. Otherwise, if you get hurt, your value is going to go down the drain.
I'm not giving a guy who gets injured like that many years. 7 years makes me queasy, let alone 9 or 10.
I'd say 5 was probably the most reasonable because these guys, Aaron Judge has proven that he gets hurt. Okay.
Let me ask you this, Eric. 7 years, $30 million a year. Wouldn't you rather 5 years, maybe 40, 42 million a year? I'd rather pay him more per year and then take on a risk of a 7-year deal.
I'd rather pay him more per year at that point in time because if it doesn't work, okay, I'm not on the hook for you. I'm not going to be on the hook forever. But yeah, I'd rather pay him more for a year, knowing that A, he gets injury prone, 2, he's an all-star MVP caliber player, and 3, I don't have to, in case it happens where he isn't the same, at worst, I'm only on the hook for 2 years. Where okay, it might be some tough sledding for a couple of years. It might be a couple years where I'm not as active as I want to be on the market. But it's 2 seasons and done. But it's 2 seasons, and it's not like I'm going to be on the hook where I can't move the guy like the Tigers are dealing with a shell of his former self, Miguel Cabrera. I'd rather not be in that position where I'm trying to get young guys up. But I cannot move him because of the contract. Nobody in their right mind will take on that deal and eat that.
Yeah, and to put into perspective, Judge's best season of his career was 5 years ago already. Like he's still a great player, but he's progressively gone worse if you want to look at it that way. His best season was as a rookie in 2017. Well, if he can put up those numbers again, I'll give him 38 million a year. But do it.
That's a hell of an act to follow, though. You have to say that. I mean, hitting 50+ bombs as a rookie. I mean, that's a hell of an act to follow. I mean, but I'm good with the numbers he's putting up now. I'm not expecting the guy to even wander into hitting 61 home runs. But
yeah, do what he's doing. Great, but you're not getting 40 million for that.
If he can go 39 and 100+ RBI, terrific. But we're not going to pay you the moon. We're not going to pay you A-Rod money. Because A-Rod was producing, steroids or not, the guy was producing
MVPs.
The guy was producing MVPs and hitting 40+ home runs a clip,
and playing every single day.
Yes, there was no such thing as you need a break.
Yeah, and the biggest thing with Judge also is again that huge body, that huge frame. The Yankees don't have a DH spot for him. They have all that money tied up in Stanton too for years and years. They can't just DH Judge after 4 or 5 years and be like, oh, we'll keep him healthy that way. Eric,
don't forget about Garrett. Don't forget about Garrett Cole.
Yes, that's another huge thing.
And
Eric,
Chapman.
I'm sure we'll come back to you, but Eric, Rick, and Scott have been very patient listening to us go back and forth as if they're not even here. So let's give them a little bit of time, I think. Rick, your thoughts?
Well, I've never been a big Aaron Judge fan. I mean, I call him the Dave Kingman of this generation. The guy, 245 average,
but that's not true. Nobody hits 75 or 280.
Nobody hits your average.
Hold up. He's a very good defensive player, graded incredibly well, has one of the best arms, is a Gold Glove caliber right fielder, and hits about 275 or 280. So those are all false. That's not true. He strikes out a lot, yes. But he's a very good fielder and a very
He's
good
just known for hitting moonshot home runs. That's all he is. He's a one-trick pony. And I would not pay him a cent. I would get rid of him. And he's crazy. He's getting some bad advice from his agent, or he's drinking some type of Kool-Aid, or he's on something, because there is no way in God's green earth that the Yankees are going to give him that type of money. But to me, he's a one-trick pony. He's Dave Kingman, and I'd get rid of him.
I wouldn't go that far with Dave Kingman, because Dave Kingman was
Rob Deere. Then
no,
he's better than all those guys. He's a hell of a player, and he can do absolutely everything. He's just injury prone.
All Kingman and Deere could do was they were essentially Joey Gallo before Joey Gallo. They either hit a home run or they didn't.
Gallo hit under 200 last year. If you look throughout Judge's career, he's always hit for average, and he's got a great on base percentage, great plate discipline, drives the ball to all parts of the field, and is a great defender. He just can't stay on the field consistently. That's the biggest knock.
Batting average is an extinct statistic in modern baseball today.
Oh, I know. You hit 315 and you're Ty Cobb. It's a joke.
Gone are the days where you have guys like Carl Yastrzemski, Ichiro Suzuki, and also Tony Gwynn and
Wade Boggs.
Yes, and Ted Williams. Gone are those days. Nobody hits for average. They don't even display batting average.
They don't do stolen bases. There's no art to the game. It's all hitting home runs. And Judge, to me, is like the poster boy of this new generation of hitting. Hey, he hit a 500-foot home run.
I wouldn't go
wonderful. They lost 8-1. Who cares? Move on.
I would put Stanton in that category of poster boy.
They're the same.
But even Stanton doesn't bat 210 or 220.
All right, let me add a little light. Let me add a little light to this, okay? I haven't been this quiet in a long time. It would be a trivia question if I can ever tell anybody how long I've been quiet for, but I've enjoyed the dialogue back and forth, so it's pretty good stuff. So here's the deal, okay, guys? Okay, we know the Miguel Cabrera contract didn't turn out real well. I would wonder whether the Christian Yelich contract for the Brewers, wonder how that's going to work out. And we know about the Albert Pujols contract didn't work out. But here's the deal, guys, okay? What everybody is missing here. Number one, if George Steinbrenner were the owner, he'd pay him the money, give him whatever the heck he wants.
Yeah, but the Yankees would have Bryce Harper and Manny Machado and Max Scherzer too, if George Steinbrenner was still here.
That's true. But if George Steinbrenner were the owner of this, then Aaron Judge would have gotten his money. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But the one person I'm surprised that nobody mentioned here is this. Right down in that National League team called the New York Mets, a guy by the name of Steve Cohen will pay it. So for anybody that says, okay, that he ain't going to get paid, I can tell you right now that if I were Aaron Judge, okay, and I wanted to get paid that kind of money, you have an owner there who, by the way, in the collective bargaining agreement, they had the Steve Cohen rule. If you pay so much money, he's going to get his money over at Queens. I don't care what any of you guys say, okay?
Yeah, no, the Mets will pay him. And the Giants have wanted him for a long time too. The Giants might dish out that money too. They need another star.
Had he not gone to the Yankees, the Giants had him at the top of the board in the draft. And also
they tried to trade for him too already.
Yep. Right. And also Fred Wilpon would pay him too. He just take a look at some of the deals he's gone.
Well, I'm not going there. No, we don't have that. Eric, no, we don't have time to go there. Mm-hmm. I really don't want to go down Fred Wilpon territory. Okay, I don't mind a lot of things, but not there considering the nature of the subject.
The Mets would pay him, but you know what? It would be a mistake to pay him if they pay him $40 million. Firstly, it'd be a mistake for him to go to the Mets. The Mets spend all the money in the world, and players go there and they suck. They stink. They
It's
get
a
injured.
gargantuan stadium. They can't hit home runs.
But if you're
Juan Gonzalez,
chasing the money, you're going to go to the Mets, and you won't go very far to do it.
Well,
Again,
I will say I would lose a lot of respect for Judge if he's just chasing the money. If he leaves the Yankees, fine. By all means, but go somewhere where you can really make a difference to the team, where, things are looking up. Sure, the Mets might be better this year, and I respect Cohen for spending all the money and trying to win. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for that. Good on him. If he can do it, he should. I wish more owners would spend more money. But going to the Mets is a clear sign of I'm taking the money. The Giants, not as much. If he goes to like an NL West team, I know the Angels spend a lot of money weirdly. He's from California, though. So if he goes to the Angels to play with Mike Trout or something, okay, cool.
Grew up in Angels,
but the biggest thing for me, if we're going to look at big contracts, Robinson Cano was a superstar player with the Yankees. Sure, he was on steroids, this, that, the other. The Yankees didn't pay him, and he had done more than Judge has done so far. So they're not going to pay Cano.
Year, and that was it.
No, Judge has been good.
Prone.
Judge has been good. He's been very, very good.
He was an all-star last year.
I think a 3-time all-star. He's a very good player. I'm just saying, if they passed up on Cano, if they let Cano walk, who had done more, who had won a World Series, who was more consistent, who played every single day on the field contributing, then why wouldn't they let Judge walk?
Well, here's the bottom line, okay? I agree with everything you guys are saying. I think any contract longer than 7-8 years is a mistake, especially when you look at the age situation.
He's going to be 30 in 2 weeks.
Yeah, right. Well, that's what I'm saying. So you're talking late 30s, and we know how these deals have worked out. They have, you get 3 or 4 or 5 years of production, then you're stuck in year number with 3 years to go. And as a result, but the reality is I do agree. I do think he should have accepted the Yankees offer. He is betting on himself. We'll just see how this thing all plays out. So, you name me a long-term again, you're talking baseball where contracts are guaranteed. The NBA contracts are guaranteed. Okay. And then not only that, you're talking hockey contracts are guaranteed, although they don't get paid any money anyways. I can get into that for another show, that the hockey salary cap is probably a lot less than what a lot of these teams' payrolls are, what one guy gets. I've done some research there. But I agree. I mean, these contracts, long-term deals being what they are for a lot of years after a certain expiration date, they'll get them. But, again, and we'll go back to the fact that, I do believe that the Angels spend a lot of money. The Giants would be better destinations. But again, you don't know what a guy's thinking, do you?
Texas just spent a bunch of money. It would be a smart move for Texas to add Judge to the money they've already invested in Seager and Semien. If you're going to go all in, right? That's the type of team where I'd be like, you know what? Good for you. Take the money, but go to a team that's trying to build something that's like, going all in, trying to
like a piece away.
Yeah, change the face of your franchise kind of thing. One more thing I would like to add on, just an idea that I've kind of floated around a little bit on these long-term deals and get some more thoughts from you guys. If you want to go 7 years, okay. But if you want to start tacking on the 8th, the 9th, the 10th year, that's where I think they need to be a lot more incentives in these deals. Give Judge the 10-year deal. But after year 7, if he hasn't averaged 120 games a season, then the deal can be voided.
That's a good idea, Lou.
Make him play a certain amount of games for the rest of that contract to kick in. That at least is a win-win. If he can stay healthy, he'll get his 8th, 9th, and 10th year. If he can't, then at least the Yankees have a little bit of security and be like, no, we're not taking on the last 3 years of that deal. See you later. Bye-bye. And I'm not just saying the Yankees. I think every team should be thinking of doing that if they're going to give out a deal more than 6 or 7 years, because these guys can sign these deals. They get guaranteed money. They stop caring as much. I'm not saying they don't care at all, but they stop caring as much because they've been paid. And what is in it for the organization? I'm usually pro player, but in this type of situation, I'm just not. Eric?
I would love if they did it obviously – toward the end, especially with them aging, have them be a little more incented. Kind of like similar to how A-Rod's contract was structured in New York, where if he hits, if he hits 500, 600, 700 home runs, he gets this amount of money. Except I'd like it a little more, instead of just having the guaranteed money on top of that. With that, it should be a little more bonus pooled. So that way, yeah, you paid your money in the first few years of the contract, which everybody knows it's very hard to play into your 40s. There's only a handful of guys that do it,
and they're typically DHs only.
Right. And it's just essentially it's just a spot on the bench is all it is, to an extent. But
Eric, would you not take an average of 120 games a season from Judge over 7 years? Maybe 1 year he only plays 95, 1 year he plays 105, but other years you're getting 130, 140.
I'd be okay with that if you can get into the hundreds. Yeah, I'm not expecting the guy to be Cal Ripken Jr. playing every single day, but if he can get into like the 100 game, the mid 100 range, like 100, 120, 110, 100 even, and maybe into the 90s if you have to go that far. I'd be okay with that. That's a worthwhile deal to me.
Yeah, let him play 120 games on average and earn the remainder of that deal. Scott, your thoughts on incentivizing these types of long-term deals, not just the Judge stuff. Eric and I are focused on it because it hits home for us a little bit more. But just in general, having a little bit of security for the team if they're giving out those types of contracts, $400 million for 10 years, $350 million 10 years, that's a lot of money.
The only thing I'll say about any contract is this. I have no problem with a contract being incentivized at any level, period. I don't care whether it's on the back end, the front end. To me, if you can earn your incentives, more power to it, because that with incentives comes production. So I don't care if it's a 10-year deal or a 5-year deal, incentives are okay with me. That's all I have to say about it.
Mr. Opinion.
Well, I mean, I'm not a fan of these big old contracts. I don't care if you're 20, 19, signing someone with a 13-year contract and all this, to me, is insane. So, I mean, but it's always good to, like, I agree with you, Lou, like the last 3 years, if they're not producing, it's like bye-bye time walk, so. But to have a little incentive, sure, it's good. I think it's good for the player, good for the team. So you got to do what's best. The player's got to do what's best for himself, and the team's got to watch their backs, because these long-term deals and all this, they never work. So you got to do something.
And the one thing I will say to defend a little bit, the 13-year deal for Tatis, I think maybe Harper got 11 or 12, 13 years, something like that.
Well,
they aren't making that 40 million range that a lot of the guys are starting to see and will continue to see. So that could actually end up looking like a really good contract in 6 or 7 years, when they would have had to re-sign these guys again and maybe pay them 45 or 50 or 55 as more money starts coming out. So those I don't mind as much, because they got them at a relatively good annual salary. When when A-Rod signed his deal, it was crazy. That much money, 25 million a year, 30 million a year. Now Trout's at 40. In 10 years, we might see 45. 50,
we're going to see $100 million contract. Someone's going to make $100 million.
We're getting there.
Scherzer's getting 45 already, right?
That's why we need a salary cap.
But they might actually have Tatis at a bargain in 2 or 3 years, which is why I'm okay with that sort of deal, because it might have been smart for them to invest. The Braves have done a really good job. They have guys like Albies and Acuna Jr. locked up on really team-friendly deals by offering them basically money throughout their entire first 6-7 years through arbitration, giving them more money than they would have gotten if they would have done the rookie contracts into the arbitration years. I'd love to see teams start doing that more too. Jose Ramirez got that from Cleveland, and he rewarded them by signing a very nice team-friendly deal, an extension. That's the type of stuff I want to see organizations paying earlier on during these players' primes, not overpaying past their primes.
If I could say something about Aaron Judge, my advice is hire Bobby Bonilla's agent, and you'll get paid for 30 years while you're not playing. That's my advice to him.
Well, you know what? With that said, okay, we're going to end that topic on a Bobby Bonilla note, okay? Because I don't think you can end it any better than that with that segue. So, all right, Lou, you wanted to talk about a trade?
It's not that big. It's not that big of a deal. It's just a Twins Padres deal with some relievers and whatnot. I thought it might be of interest if we didn't take 4 hours on Judge, which I'm glad we did. I'll turn it back over to you to wrap things up, or if you
Well,
guys
go
have
ahead.
anything else.
Well, while you put it in there, why don't you let everybody that's curious about it just give them a summary of the trade real quick.
Okay, Twins and Padres exchanged a couple players. The Twins got Emilio Pagan and a starting pitcher named Chris Paddock from the Padres, and the Padres got themselves a closer in Taylor Rogers and an additional outfielder in Brent Rooker. Fairly minor deal, except the Padres didn't really have a closer set. Kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, and they now do with Taylor Rogers. There was about 3 or 4 guys all competing for that role. Now they have their man, but now him leaving Minnesota opens up a revolving door potentially there. So wherever you go, you can't hide from the revolving door closer.
There you go. All right. Well, folks, just so you know, this is 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Manmouth, and my guys are in true form tonight. I'm telling you, some of these subjects that you came up with, Lou, were loaded. And I mean loaded, and that's why it was so interesting to watch you and Rick, Eric, talk about the Aaron Judges, because some of these topics deserve a fair amount of time. But once again, folks, it's been a great broadcast tonight. Rick Curti, Mr. Opinion, been on here. Eric Katz, Concrete Dump, and Lou Landers, L Square at Landers Talks. Great show tonight. Proud of each and every one of you. And with that said, okay, in case you didn't hear us earlier, the show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio. You can see it on YouTube channel and also on www.southfloridatribune.com. I'll give my contact information, turn it over to you guys. You can find us on Twitter at Tribune South, and you can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. So, I also want to give a kudos to Candy Ebling, who does a remarkable job with the website, making sure these broadcasts get up there in a timely manner. So if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please go out there and do so. You'll get all the notifications when our shows come up. All right, Rick, take it away. Let everybody know how they get a hold of you.
Well, you can find me on my website at www.charlottebats.com. I'm also on Facebook at Charlotte MLB. I'm also on there as Charlotte Bats. I'm also on Instagram as Charlotte Bats. I'm also on Twitter, Charlotte Bats Baseball. And I'm also on LinkedIn under Rick Curti. And my email address is cotbatsbaseball@gmail.com.
All right, and one other comment in the chat room other than Mark Pricer comes from Ron Kroll. Why are the salaries ridiculous when the owners have their club values go up hundreds of millions each year? You know what, Lou? I'm going to let you answer that question. Then we'll go to Eric and you, and we'll call it a night.
Is he saying why do we think the salaries are so insane because the owners are making so much? I think that's what he's saying, right? I just want to be clear.
Believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Judging by the questions of why are the salaries ridiculous when the owners have their club values go up hundreds of millions?
The salaries aren't ridiculous if the players actually play out their contracts. Again, I'm all for giving a guy $35 million a year for 10 years at the age of 23, 25, 27, not at 30, because they're not earning that contract. You're not supposed to be paying guys for what they've done for you. What they've done for you helps you decide how much money to give them, but you're paying them for what they're going to do for you in your contract. You don't give a guy $400 million because he's had 5 good seasons. You're giving him $400 million because you expect him to have 5 to 7 more good seasons. So if we've seen the best from some of these players, why are we giving them all this money? It's not about how much the owners are making. It's about the players staying on the field and the players earning that money once they've signed those deals.
All right, Ron, I hope that clarifies things. All right, Eric, let everybody know they get a hold of Mr. Concrete Dump.
I'd like to hear Eric's opinion on what I just said, to be honest.
Well,
all right, go ahead.
Okay, there's obviously hopefully everybody knows the movie Moneyball. One of my favorites with Brad Pitt in it. There's this line in there saying, "I'm not paying you for what the player you were then. I'm paying you for what you are now." That should be baseball's mode of thinking, where, you can't. I mean, free agency is a very flawed thing. You basically are past the guy's prime by the time he gets to go out and explore the market. But as far as that goes, I just think that baseball's thinking, just with paying a player for what you think he's going to do, is just flawed. I mean, the system's clearly broken and needs to be fixed.
Well, Ron Kroll also added, even though we love the sports, it really is all about the money, which is true. All right. With that said, Lou, let everybody know how they can get a hold of you.
Let Eric go.
Yep.
All right, Eric, go ahead.
You can follow me on Twitter at Sports Team News, or you can for you. And I also write for BellyUpSports.com covering Wisconsin Badgers football.
All right. L Square.
All right, Lou Landers at Landers Talks on Twitter, Sirius XM Fantasy Sports, 9:30 a.m. Sundays, drroto.com. I'm the content director for baseball content there, so come check that out. I got 3 different podcasts throughout the week, including this one, Sports Byline USA, Armed Forces Network, tons of stuff, mostly baseball, a little bit of NFL here and there, daily fantasy, seasonal fantasy, you name it, I do it.
All right, Ron Kroll, I want to also thank you for tuning in, and we appreciate the kind words that you and the participation of everybody else. You know what? When we have these interactive shows like we have, these are so much fun. I love the camaraderie amongst you guys, which is why I think the world of you 3. And, you know, and again, for me, it's just fun listening to it and being quiet because, you know, to me, that's what this is all about. This is an interactive broadcast with 4 people that know the game as well as we do. So, meanwhile, with that said, on behalf of Rick Curti, Mr. Opinion, and Eric Katz, Concrete Dump, and Lou Landers at Landers Talks, this is Scott Morgan, Roth Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, and we will look forward to another edition next week. Take care, everybody, and enjoy the Diamond doings. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right.